Hey folks. Hey Maro! Nice to see you. Or not, because the camera's off, but still.
Hey Tilo, nice to see you,
Hey!
man. Sorry, the background doesn't help. That's why I was blocking it.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can do something about it.
Hello. The agenda's pretty light today. I just pasted the link to the meeting notes in case you want to add any items that you'd like to discuss. And also feel free to add your name to the list of participants. Yeah, maybe wait for one more minute. Hopefully more people will be joining.
Do I need to do something special to log in? I hit the sign in via GitHub, but it just stays there.
Log into the meeting notes.
Yep.
Let me check my. Well, I'm logged in. I believe there are other guests who can also who just made some edits. So you should not have to log in.
Yeah, are you able to see the page at all, or you just hit with a login page?
I see the page.
Oh, you have to press like the edit button that's kind of hidden. Like
Okay,
on
I don't need to be signed in then. Okay, got it.
Nope.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, the UI is a little bit confusing. Like you have to find the
No
button.
worries.
Yeah,
The edit button.
the edit button is like 1 pixel on the whole screen.
Right. Okay, seems like there's only one item in the agenda for now, but as we go on, like feel free to add. Mike, you added a topic for a presentation on OCM.
Yes, I did. Let me share my screen if I'm able to. Yep,
Okay.
let me share my screen.
But this meeting will be recorded and we can share it to other community members after the meeting if they can join today.
Okay, thank you, Terry, for the introduction. Today on the agenda, I just put a short presentation and demo for Open Cluster Management. I'm Mike Ng. I'm one of the Open Cluster Management or OCM. I'll be saying OCM in the presentation maintainer. I think some of you, or hopefully most of you, already heard the project, so I don't want to go too deep dive into the project as a whole, but I'll be highlighting some of the important points, our current progress, and how it relates to the tag workload foundation. So,
Very quick, before you go, could you click the hide button at the bottom? Okay, that's good. Thanks.
thank you, Terry. Okay, just a quick summary of what Open Cluster Management is. We're still in CNCF Sandbox project, but we have applied for CNCF incubation. We did take about a year to really do our due diligence in-house before we apply. So to ensure that, we're not going back and forth with CNCF, to make sure we have a good, solid application. So we're entering our 5th year as CNCF project. The project is about multi-cluster Kubernetes orchestration using vendor-neutral APIs. So the architecture as a whole is hub and spoke, and our main thing that stands out is modular and extensible. It's pretty lightweight. We're trying to provide a project that makes the Kubernetes ecosystem to have multi-cluster capability awareness. So just a quick overview of our current progress. Before we apply for incubation, we did a 1.0 release, marking that the project's now quite stable, have maturity, and there's a lot of community engagement and adopters and contributors. And then we've been participating basically every single major KubeCon, ArgoCon, all the conferences around Kubernetes. And then we have growing integration with other projects. And another thing that we're doing, we continue to participate and lead in the SIG multi-cluster, where the SIG MC have been taking a more of a defining the APIs and let implementers implement those API approach. So we have tons of new features and then new adds on and then AI related enhancement, etc. That's already there and it'll keep on coming. And then we'll be continuing delivering roughly around 3 to 4 months releases. So before I continue to take a more deep dive on the technical aspect, I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions.
Maybe one question from me. Like you mentioned participation in KubeCon. Do you have any links to the sessions or discussions?
Yeah, I think in KubeCon EU we were there, and ArgoCon we presented OCM with Argo CD agent. KubeCon EU, I think we represented the multi-cluster SIG, and we talk about the centralized multi-cluster APIs, and then us as part of the implementer OCM and how we implement that API and how SIG multi-cluster the API centralization is good for everyone and not just for for us or the co-presenter. I think it was from Microsoft.
Got it. Thanks. It would be good to have a central place to keep all the links so that others can learn from them.
Yep, I'll provide the links shortly after the meeting. Thank you, Terry.
Thanks.
Big question. Maybe you have the clarification on later slides, so I pardon in advance. What do you say is the difference between your project and similar cluster management projects like Cluster API?
Yes, so I can talk about that. So Cluster API is more about setting up the infrastructure. So it's about day 0 or day 1 operation where you bootstrap a cluster from nothing. But in OCM.io, we have integration with Cluster API, but it's more for day 2 operations where it's about maybe delegate workload to once you have the clusters under your management, it's about scheduling the workloads down to those clusters and then manage the life cycles of those workload, etc.
Oh, thank you.
So,
that's very helpful.
Yep. I would say that's the main difference. And then, of course, there are other multi-cluster orchestrator, day 2 multi-cluster orchestrator in the ecosystem as well. my good friend Honkai from the Kamada team is one of them. And our differences between that project is we're a little bit more modular, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then I would say we're a little bit more lightweight. And while Kamada comes out of the box is with the full feature sets, and so there's advantages and disadvantages for both, but we're not like there's a good space for us in the ecosystem, and there's good space for the other projects as well, and we try not to overlap, the feature sets, or maybe even if we overlap on a feature set, we try to not overlap in terms of the architecture, and then we'll give the community choices on which solution best fit their needs.
Have you did like comparison with Garden from SAP?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Have you done the feature comparison with Gardener from SAP company?
Yeah, I think Gartner also came out after us as well. So Gartner is also a more full suite solution, and yeah, so that's another good project to look at as well. Okay, that's a good leeway into how I can talk a little bit about the OCM core architecture. So we have mainly these four main concepts. We have the registration, which is you register your clusters into the cluster inventory, and then you have manifest work. The work is for delivering workload, and the placement is more of the scheduling or where to place the workload. And then we have kind of like an add-on system that you can extend on how you want to do your multi-cluster solutions. So what I like to say is most of these components are independent. So for example, you can use placement without using manifest work. You can use manifest work without placement, etc., etc. So that's how OCM kind of differentiate itself from some of the other project. We're a bit modular, and of course the add-ons, you can pick and choose the add-ons as you like. So how we kind of want to build on top of SIG-MC is SIG-MC defines some of the standardization of the multi-cluster APIs. And how we define those APIs is through community agreements, multiple projects coming together. And then we decide, hey, this is kind of the best spec to go for not us providers, which is the multi-cluster orchestrator, but also for the consumers as well. So some of the APIs that the SIG-MC provides is about API, Work API, Cluster Profile API, Multi-Cluster Services API, and then soon under CAP, maybe even the Placement API. So building on top of that, OCM really wants to adopt the standardization, and then we have, not going to go into all the details of each one, but essentially we have OCM implementation of each SIG-MC API. So how that benefits the consumer is the consumers can look at the SIG-MC API as the central API to adopt and use without having to know the implementers. So the implementer could be OCM, could be Kamada, maybe hopefully it'll be Gartner if they adopt this approach, and then it'll all work for all the multi-cluster providers, regardless of which one they choose, because the consumer is consuming the SIG-MC API. So that's my kind of leeway into each individual APIs in the OCM. But before that, I want to pause here and see if there are any questions. Okay, I'm gonna continue then. So the there are a few core concepts in OCM, as I mentioned. First of all, there's the big cluster inventory, and this is where you have the hub. I'm going to do a demo on this later. You have a hub, and then you have a bunch of managed clusters that register to the hub. So the feature itself, it's about cluster inventory, and then it also describes the clusters. When the description of the cluster allows you to do stuff like scheduling, etc., and for example, where to place the workload. And then the more interesting part is more related to the TAG Workload Foundation part of it. It's placement. So placement is about scheduling. So where to put your workload, essentially. And then there's input to the placement. It could be predicates, it could be prioritization, it could be both. And then once the scheduler figure out where to put the placement, it'll output it into a placement decision results. Placement decision is something that we're trying to push to the SIG MC right now. And then it kind of standardized kind of the output of the scheduling decisions so that when a consumer, for example, Argo CD, wants to know where to place their workload to, they can consume the placement decision, which is hopefully going to be a SIG MC standardized API. And that way, Argo CD or whatever third-party project doesn't have to consume necessarily the OCM API or some other API. They can consume placement decision and still enable kind of the multi-cluster workload scheduling benefits. So there's a lot of placement in OCM.io. There's a lot of placement different features. So I mentioned there's the predicate, which again, mostly just label selection. And then in Kubernetes, they really adopt this CL expression, cell expression for, I think, CRD validation. We also adopted it because it kind of seems like the standard way of doing this type of scripting-ish for selecting stuff. So we also have the cell expression to select your cluster as well. And then taints and tolerations is something we have as well. We really treat managed clusters to the hub kind of like the worker nodes joining into a Kubernetes control plane. So we're taking the concept of a single Kubernetes cluster over to a multi-cluster space. And this is largely because we have a maintainer, David Eads, who has been with Kubernetes basically since the beginning. So he took a lot of concept, like for example in here, taints and tolerance, over from the Kubernetes over to OCM, but placed in more of a multi-cluster concept. So there's going to be a lot of names that hopefully user will recognize if they're quite familiar with Kubernetes already. And then there's also the score-based prioritization. And then, for example, there's some built-in stuff that you can use already, allocate available memories, available CPU, available GPU. But it's also quite customizable. So you can build your own add-on, and then you can dynamically reflect the scoring, and then the scheduler will pick based on the scoring and your criteria, like you want the weights, or you want the scoring, the high scoring, etc., etc. And then the placement also have decision strategy. It's kind of like having the groups of decisions, which kind of allows for the rollout strategy. So you want to have kind of like a progressive rollout to each different managed cluster. The inspiration obviously came from the deployment and maybe stuff like Argo rollout and something like that. but only taking it from a single, taking from the single Kubernetes cluster to the multi-cluster space. So hopefully, you're able to play around with OCM, play with the placement scheduling, because this is one of the more attractive use case of OCM. And again, it's quite modular. Placement by itself doesn't really apply the workload. Placement itself simply saying, oh, here are my conditions, or here is my current reality, or here's the output. Now, you as a consumer, or OCMIO is also internal consumer placement. Now take that result and do something with it. And we have users that quite like that. It's on its own. It's not coupled with other stuff, so they can do their flexible solution based on the output. Okay, before I get to workload distribution, I'm going to take a pause and see if there's any questions regarding placement. Okay, so the central theme of OCM is about workload distribution as well. So simply put, manifest work API, or the work API, is kind of like an envelope wrapping the letter. And the letter are essentially resources that you want to apply on the managed cluster. And then the envelope is say where to apply to, have a stamped address. Oh, this is for cluster 1, this is for cluster 2. And then how maybe provides kind of like a status feedback on, oh, once the workload is applied, I kind of want to continue monitor the health and do something with it. So there's going to be status tracking, and then there's also garbage collection, right? Like once I no longer want that workload, how is it want to be garbage collected? Or maybe when I delete it, I want to orphan that resource. So there's options like that available. And then stuff like, what if the resource already exists, and how do you able to adopt it or not adopt it, or deal with the resource waste and condition? Like if there's a controller that is continually manipulating that resource, how is manifest work gonna be able to handle that? There's also specs to deal with that as well. And then there's identity authorization. Basically means how much permission you want to give to the work agent on and checking the permission of the subject before you applying the workload to make sure you have a good security practice. So let me go into the work distribution, the manifest work. So here are some of the things I just talked about. So you have status tracking. Again, status tracking, we have the JSON path, and then we have kind of like we define a well-known status, which is a well-known status, which is a pre-built template for feedback for well-known Kubernetes resource like deployment. If a deployment is part of the manifest work, I mean the deployment is wrapped by the manifest work, then you'll already pick up the replicas, different condition is available, etc. as the standardized resource feedback. So there's other use case like, oh, how do you schedule a job? You don't need to continue reconciling, and how it defines completion. And then of course, again, cell is becoming more popular. You can define cell expression as well. And then there's many different ways of garbage cleanup. And then we talk about condition. We talk about there's multiple condition type, and then job, etc. Garbage collection, we briefly talk about it, resource waste, etc. And then there's server side apply to deal with kind of like the resource waste as well, and then the permission settings, etc. So all these technical details are in the OCM website if you would like to play with them. And then I think that's basically the end. So I'm gonna, before I get to a quick demo, like really high level demo, are there any questions on regarding these core concepts? Mostly, hopefully, around workload and placement because we're in the tag workload foundation call. Okay, I'm gonna go to do a simple demo then. So I already have kind of the OCM environment set up. On the left side, I have the hub cluster, which is kind of like your multi-cluster control plane. And then you can see the cluster manager deployed there, which is part of the OCM component, which indicate, oh, I'm managing a bunch of clusters. And then you have on the right side, I have two managed clusters registered to the hub cluster. And you can see the CRD name as well. We call it clusterlet, kind of like kubelet. So it represents, oh, these are kind of like the workers for this multi-cluster control plane. And then let's see what are some of the resources I'll be applying. So I want to apply first the placement. Hopefully you guys can see that. And I'm just selecting essentially all the clusters that match this simple cell expression. So let me. So once you have the placement applied, you can see that I managed to select both cluster because they both match the cell expression requirement. And then you can see the decision. So decision is a slice. You notice the dash one because you might have a lot of clusters and we don't want to go over the etcd limit. And then so if there are a lot of clusters, it'll become like -2, -3, etc. So on its own placement, this is it. This is decoupled from anything else. It just shows, oh, I have these requirements, inputs, and I'm showing the outputs here. Now, as a consumer, you can do something with it. And then, so that's on its own is one particular API. So I'm gonna show another API called manifest work, which I talked about earlier. So in this case, I'll be deploying the manifest work into the cluster one namespace. In open cluster management, each namespace, each managed cluster have its own particular namespace in the hub cluster. And then this managed cluster one only has access to this cluster one namespace, and this cluster two only has managed to namespace with cluster two on the hub side. So if I place a manifest work in cluster one namespace, the cluster one spoke cluster is going to pull the manifest inside the manifest work. In this case, it's a deployment, I think. Yep. And then it will be created on this spoke cluster. So once it's created, I can kind of see, oh, it's created on the cluster one now, and then, but it's not created on the cluster two. Okay, so that, and this API is independent of placement and other APIs as well. This is simply a API about deploying workload on itself. So how do you, as a external implementer or even internal OCM, how do you combine the two? So we have something called kind of like a manifest work replica set. And this combines, oh, look, use displacement and then use this manifest work and then deploy it to the workload into those clusters that match displacement results, right? So if so after I delete it, so it should be empty on both. So Now, because it uses the placement decision here, both managed clusters are able to get the workload. So that's basically it on a super high level, and then kind of like a status on the OCM IO project. We're happy to talk with any users, any parties that are interested, and we're looking for the Tag Workloads Foundation for more guidance as we walk the incubation steps. Any questions, feedback? You can hit me up in any of these channels, or in the Tag Workload Foundation channel as well.
Very cool, Mike. Thanks for presenting. One question, something I didn't understand is you had two full clusters there, or was it like you had a hosted control plane on the left with OC and just workers on the right?
So I should have mentioned this. These are all three kind clusters that I set up to do a quick demo. On the left side, it's a kind hub cluster using the hub classics. These are brand new clusters I just initiated. And then these two are also their individual kind clusters. And then I went through the in the interest of time, I went through the registration step, which the OCMIO provide using a CLI tool called the cluster admin. So kind of similar to, what's that tool called? Cube admin. When you want to
Right.
standardize a single Kubernetes cluster, right? So using the cluster admin, you can register your worker cluster, in this case a kind cluster, to the hub, which is the control plane, multi-cluster control plane cluster, one by one. You register this one and you register this one, and then over here you'll see that they're now registered and managed by the hub or the multi-cluster control plane. Did that answer your question, or is there still a little bit of confusion?
Got it. No, thanks. That clears it up.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna stop the sharing.
Thank you, Mike, for presenting. One question I have, so I'm looking at the website of the project. There's a section for ecosystem, and you mentioned like Argo CD, Argo CD agent, and Argo workflows. But when I click Argo workflows GitHub issue, it links me. It redirects me to your GitHub issue comment. So I wonder if there's anything more like any end-to-end demo with that.
Yeah, so that is still kind of in progress, or stale a little bit. So one of the maintainer for Argo workflow. I'm trying to get that.
Alex, maybe
No, it was not Alex. It was
Bala?
Bala.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So Bala and Julian, was it Julian?
Julie, yes.
Yes.
Find
So
into it.
they're from Intuit, and then they actually use OCM, and then they did a whole multi-cluster demo within some, like, let's just say some space, and then it was all working well, and they have kind of this repo. I think the most official sanction repo is the one under Bella's GitHub ID. If you let me just link it.
Yeah, the fork. Yeah,
The
I've
Argo.
seen that. But I wonder if like anyone, because Bala and Julie, they may not be as committed to that project anymore. So it would be great to see if the community has the interest to invest time in that issue, because if it's something already working, we should like try to bring it to the wider community. Like that was like one of the top voted issue with like 300 thumb ups.
Yeah, yeah.
So we really want to get that out of the way at some point. It's been there for a while, 5 years.
Yeah, yeah. So last time I discussed with Bella and Julius, uh, I didn't really understand it, but they said because of the AI stuff, they have to pivot away from the multi-cluster. But I told them, hey, AI needs multi-cluster workflow management, right? So I don't understand the logic of pivot away from the multi-cluster. But yes, I can. Let's see what we can do here. I will invest more time into this, and then see what the community thinks. I'm talking about the Argo workflow community. Maybe I'll update the project, and then maybe I'll update provide kind of a documentation on Argo workflow side, and I think they have a upstream doc, and then kind of reference a project somewhere, and then we can kind of see if that is a good enough solution for everyone. But
yeah, sounds good. I'll also put you in touch with the more active leads in Argo workflows to see, because they are also working on multi-cluster support. So I wonder what the status is. Maybe there's something we can collaborate over there.
yeah,
Anyways, we can discuss offline.
great. Thank you, Terry.
And Alex has a question in the chat. What is distribution of maintainers for OCM between companies? Is it mainly backed by Red Hat or other companies also invested?
Yeah, there's other company. In fact, one of the company is Spectral Cloud. Yeah. So who's in the call as well? Let me link the. Off the top of my head, I don't know the full distribution, but in the GitHub, the maintainer page, there's there's a list of all of them, and we do have a good distribution of different companies using it. Okay, it's Guidewire, Satin Cloud, Spectral Cloud, as I mentioned, Apps Code, and Red Hat, and eBay. So those are the lists. So the maintainer list is quite diverse. I mean, in terms of company, when I say diverse. Let me link it in the chat now. Where's the chat?
I actually just commented in the chat.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah,
So
this is great. Yeah.
we're always looking for new maintainers, new contributors. If you're interested in the project, feel free to play with it. Thank you. Thank you again, Terry. Sorry to cut you off there.
Yeah, thank you for presenting. I would say like, did you already submit a GitHub issue for applying to for incubation?
Yes, we have. Let me link that there as well. So if
Okay,
you
yeah, I'm gonna be linking in the meeting notes.
let me, yeah, that would be great. A thumbs up or a heart is definitely welcome. Again, we could have applied for incubation earlier, but we really wanted to do our full due diligence and have everything set ready to go, because I think CNCF backlog on the incubation application is quite huge, not just incubation application, but everything. So we don't want to burden them with, like a poor submission. So hopefully we can get into incubation quite successfully, and hopefully not being in the incubation is not a thing that prevents users or community from trying it out, because it's only a matter of time. We have dedicated a lot of time on this project, and it's definitely not going anywhere.
Yeah, the level, like, yeah, there's nothing stopping users from using a sandbox project. And there are a lot of like sandbox projects that are quite successful and widely adopted. It's just a matter of time. So hopefully with the new tax restructuring and there's a new sub-project reviews sub-project that will be dedicated to project reviews. So since you presented this in our meeting here, we can probably bring it up at some point and see who can be assigned to review that project. Yeah, we'll go from there, I guess.
Great, thank you, Terry.
All right, anything else? Cool. One thing I want to mention is like we do have a KubeCon maintainer session talking about this tag. If you are coming to KubeCon North America, feel free to stop by, and so maybe we can meet in person and get connected over there, and maybe we can identify some collaboration opportunities. Uh, who knows? Yeah. Looking forward to the KubeCon then, and see you in the next.
Sorry, Terry.
Yeah.
I just saw Raman who joined. He mentioned in the SIG Slack channel today he was looking for guidance. I invited him to this call, so hopefully he can talk a little bit.
Okay. Hey, hi, Raman. Do you have a topic?
Oh, I didn't
Oh, I
want
see.
to
Like
come in the
last
middle of
team.
any ongoing conversation, but yes, I do have a topic I would
Okay.
want to discuss.
Yeah, that's
Right now?
fine. Yeah.
Okay. So me and my friend from True Foundry have been building this tool called Cubelasty, and Cubelasty is basically a scale to zero tool for Kubernetes, where it brings any target uh, to zero when it has been idle for a certain amount of period. And we have been using it internally for about a year with few other companies. And we were wondering if we can bring it to CNCF sandbox, and that's the primary question: that is this the right place to talk about it? And if you think it's a good fit for sandbox, uh, how should we move forward with that?
I think the new process is as soon as I assume you already submitted your application, right? As a GitHub
Uh,
issue.
we, no, we have not. So there it said that you have to reach out to somebody from Tag before submitting. That was the understanding, but we are prepared to submit it. We have like followed the whole checklist and followed all the guidelines that needs to be there. This is the only thing we were holding on, like the last thing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually not familiar with the process like before submitting an issue. Mike, do you or Rian, since you are here, do you know the process, like what they need to do like before actually submitting the GitHub issue?
I I don't know the true requirement because I'm not one of the community member of CNCF, but a presentation and a quick demo, something like what I did on OCM would be kind of nice in this call because that kind of showcase, hey, here's my project to the community, especially on this particular group.
Understood. Sure. I can do that right now also. I'm a little underprepared, but I think I can walk you through what we have been building in 2-3 minutes.
I'm thinking maybe we should schedule it for next time, because we
Yeah,
only have like 14 minutes left. And
that
like
also works.
And then we can invite more folks who are interested in the project to join the call so that we can get more traction and
So
more feedback on during the meeting.
regarding joining the CNCF, we jumped Sandbox and basically went incubation straight away, the Flatcar container Linux. But as far as I understand, there is an issue, like a tracking issue, and you have to file a PR to the TOC repository that basically introduces your project, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm just browsing that project for past PRs to give you an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, so what I could understand was that you have to create a issue in it with all the requirements filled out, and then the community members go there and put their opinions there on that, and then they basically move it to different tracks, like either revise the application or like if there are any changes required or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can ask any questions in this channel. There's a channel called CNCF Project Reviews. If you have
Oh,
any
okay.
questions regarding the process, like just send it over there and I'm sure people will help answer that.
Yeah, this is helpful.
Normally, the entry point for a project would be Sandbox. But if you have a very mature project with a lot of adoption and
Ria,
good
I can't
governance.
hear you clearly. Maybe it's just me. It's a
No, it's
little
really
bit low.
silent.
Yeah, it's silent.
Is that a little better?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
better. Yeah.
Sorry, I just turned up my microphone. Okay, normally projects enter at Sandbox level, but if you do have a very mature project with a lot of adopters, with proper governance, with a lot of collaborators across different companies. So if you have a project with 3 maintainers from one company and very little governance, Sandbox is the way to go. If you are really mature and you have big market players already adopting, that's the way to go. So you look carefully through it. There is definitely a precedence that you could enter at incubation, but it is a kind of a big step up from ground level up to incubation.
Yeah, I agree.
Makes sense.
Was a steep learning curve.
Makes sense. Yeah, thanks, Jan. Yeah, Yuan, I think in that case we can schedule something. I would request for a different slot at a different time, and I will be there with my co-maintainer for that call.
Yeah. Sounds good. Go ahead.
Yeah, just joining this meeting for the first time. I was the technical head of the special purpose operating systems working group with the old tech runtime. So I just said, I just thought I'd drop by and say hi, and kind of gauge if there's an interest in continuing that. I see from the charter that this has kind of folded into this tag, which I think makes sense. We're a pretty small group. So if there's interest in that, I know Mauro was also part of that group, very active. I would drop by more often and give you folks a little updates and insight from the operating system angle.
That would be awesome. Yeah, we really need a lot of like expertise in different areas. Like the more people we can pull in from projects, the better. This tag it also has a lot pretty broad scope, so it's also a challenge for us to operate.
Yeah.
So any expertise you can offer would be highly appreciated.
All right. I'll see if I can pop up a small demo for the next meeting then.
Yeah, sounds good. For those of you who joined late, feel free to add your name to the participant list. Let me paste the link again. Anything else? Okay. Okay, that's it for today then. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, everyone.
Actually, in a month. Have a good day.